If you were the Patriots, would you ever have considered trading Tom Brady?
No, I would not have. No. He's a champion, and he's still balling. And it's not about what have you done for me lately. It's about the level of belief I have in you and what you can do. I think one of the things that's gotten lost in this whole Jimmy Garoppolo shuffle is that, you know, people like Max are looking at the birth certificate and it's 40 years of age and the cliff is coming and all of this other stuff. And listen, it's a reasonable conclusion to draw per se, but I'm also going to take the time to look at you and what you're doing in that moment. And I'm going to say to myself, if you're a champion who has produced for me, the question is, do I have enough faith in myself to go out and find another Jimmy Garoppolo in a second round? Whereas I can appreciate you and keep you on board for your level of production and what I think you can do for the foreseeable future. Or do I have to push the panic button and say, you know what? He's getting too old. He's gonna fall off a cliff. I need to cut my losses right now, and I need to go with Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm saying that I would have chosen the former, not the latter, like Mr. Kraft, and I would not have traded Tom Brady. I would have laughed and hung up on John Lynch, too.
I'd have considered trading him, sure, because in the NFL, no one, I don't care who you are, is above that. You know who the original Tom Brady was? The original Tom Brady, because Tom Brady and Peyton Manning's careers very much ran parallel tracks in terms of the chronology of obviously Brady's outlasted him. But throughout most of that time, by the numbers, it's Peyton. In the regular season, it's Peyton. Yeah. But the guy on the better team with the better coach and the guy who just gave you the feeling, that's the guy I want on my team, was Tom Brady. In fact, before A-Rod and Jeter got on the same team, it was largely the same thing, right? Like, A-Rod had the numbers, Jeter was on the better team, but you kind of want Jeter. And it's hard to separate out how much of that is the team and the coach and the player, but it all gets rolled into your mind like, that's the guy I want. I think the players around them feel that too, and it actually helps their leadership. It helps Tom Brady. That mythology builds up around him, and by the way, he earns it. But Brady was usually outplayed by Peyton the way Joe Montana wouldn't put up the same kind of numbers as Dan Marino. Remember that? Mm-hmm. If you really just isolated quarterback play, you'd say Marino is the guy, but Montana was the original Tom Brady, and he was the multiple-time champion and multiple-time Super Bowl champion. And he had the great coach in Walsh, who revolutionized the game and wasn't quite at the level Belichick is compared to his contemporaries, but was the Belichick of his era in the sense that he was the best coach in the game, who was the most successful. And you know what they did in San Francisco, Stephen A., when they had Steve Young on the bench? They traded Joe Montana. He was Tom Brady. They traded him. Now, did he still have something left? He sure did. He took the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game. You trade him a year too early instead of a year too late. You know what they got back? Dana Stubblefield, who was the Defensive Rookie of the Year, who was Defensive Player of the Year a couple years later, who was a 3-time Pro Bowler, and helped them win another Super Bowl with Steve Young. You trade them a year too early. That means you will be second-guessed for a short while. But ultimately, instead of the guy retiring with nothing to show for it, you can get an all-pro player and hand the reins to another potentially great quarterback.
And I guess what I'm saying to you is this. You have to remember that Steve Young had some time in the USFL, if I remember correctly. He is a guy that had proven that he could play on this level. And as a result of that, he was just waiting his turn. The only reason he wasn't a starting quarterback somewhere else is because he was in San Francisco backing up the great Joe Montana. I understand that I understand the thinking, but people have to understand the thinking exists because of this belief in Jimmy Garoppolo. I still want to see it. I know he's 7-0 as a starter. I know he's 5-0 in San Francisco. I know they were 1-10 until he got there. And I understand all of that. But now that Jimmy Garoppolo is coming, and there's going to be more film on him and everything everybody's been saying about him, I want to see it. And my point is that I know what I'm getting from Tom Brady. I don't blame you or anybody else for feeling high on Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not trying to imply that this guy is going to be some scrub or whatever. But I'm saying that there was more evidence about Steve Young as the backup to Joe Montana than there is about Garoppolo as the backup to Tom Brady.
Lynch says that basically Belichick laughed and hung up on him.
Yes.
Right? I understand that based partly on what you're saying. Belichick wasn't satisfied that Brady didn't have enough runway, and Garoppolo maybe was ready at that time to pull the trigger on a deal. But would he have considered it, say, this year or next, depending on how Brady plays? Remember, you can't wait until the guy's no good anymore. Then you get nothing for him. If you believe on what's on your bench, and Belichick did in Garoppolo eventually, you got to get rid of him when he's still good.
If anyone knows that, it's Bill Belichick. He's the guy that gets rid of players too early. I mean, we can name all the potential Hall of Famers.